So I've been on this nearly 2-year healing journey. It's been difficult. Betrayal is difficult. Being a betrayed husband has its unique challenges, like feelings and emotions we're never allowed to express. And there aren't really a ton of resources out here. Everything that does exist is always filled with a ton of anger, misogyny, and the sentiments of burn it all down and just walk away. So, yeah. I figured I'd share some of the things that have been helping me and some of the experiences that I've had. I don't really have a lot of friends. I don't really have anyone to talk to except for my therapist. And sometimes saying things out loud helps make them real and helps things sink in. So I figure I'll talk to you. Do you want to know the hardest thing I've realized in recovering from betrayal? So there's this fracture in the relationship, a break I didn't cause, trauma inflicted by a person who said that they loved me, wounds created by someone else's decisions. When we try to rebuild, the expectation is that my needs come first. I'm the priority. I'm the one who's hurt. My wife gets defensive. She deflects. She doesn't attune. And for a long time, I thought that meant that she didn't care about my pain. Then one day it hit me. The person I love is in pain too. Not instead of me, but alongside me. Not as an excuse, but as a reality. And the truth, she's probably been in pain longer than I have. Set aside the affair for a minute. Set aside the wound that it created. The defensiveness, the deflection, they aren't because of the affair. They're because of the pain that existed before the affair. The pain that led her there. The pain that maybe she still hasn't learned how to hold. If there hadn't been an affair, if our communication had been more secure, I would be the loving, supportive husband walking through the pain with her. And I know that there are consequences to her choices, and that means that her pain has to wait. But I also need to remember that her pain is still there. I want to talk about attunement. I have only now, after almost 2 years, realized that attunement, or the lack of, has been a major roadblock in my healing. Attunement is one of those concepts that people talk about all the time, but almost never define it clearly. I believe it's the foundation of emotional safety, trust, and intimacy. I think in reality, it's incredibly simple, but also seems incredibly rare. Attunement is the skill of feeling another person's emotional state accurately, without making it about yourself. Attunement is not fixing, defending, interpreting, projecting, comparing, mutualizing, or shifting the focus. It's just feeling where the other person is and responding in a way that matches their emotional reality, not your own. Staying with the other person's feelings is being attuned. If I say I'm hurt, attunement sounds like tell me what hurt. I am here. I want to understand. Not I'm hurt too, but you. We both. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry, but. It's regulating yourself so you can stay in the present. In the sense of betrayal, attunement requires the unfaithful to manage their own shame, their own defensiveness, their own fear, their own guilt, their own discomfort, so that they don't make the moment about themselves. Attunement is emotional mirroring. It's not emotional merging. It's reflecting the other person's emotional reality accurately. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything they say. It's just showing that you understand what they're feeling. You know, like you felt alone, you felt dismissed, you felt unsafe. It's responding in a way that meets an emotional need. If I'm scared, you offer safety. If I'm sad, you offer presence. If I'm angry, you offer clarity and boundaries. Attunement is responsiveness, not reactivity. Attunement is not, I'm sorry, but explaining your intentions, shifting the focus to your feelings. It's not mutualizing the pain, defending yourself, correcting my perception. It is absolutely not about trying to fix the emotion so that you feel less uncomfortable. Attunement is the ability to stay with someone else's emotional experience without losing yourself or making it about you. Again, I think it's the foundation for emotional safety, trust, and intimacy. Something that's very difficult being a betrayed husband is realizing that I don't actually understand my own emotions. Something that was and is still very difficult for me are feelings and emotions. More so the lack of understanding my own feelings and emotions. I grew up in a stable home, loving parents, a supportive environment, no major chaos. But in my house, emotions were binary. You were either happy or not happy. And everything that wasn't happy got shoved into the same category. I was never taught how to sit with my feelings, never taught how to express emotion. So naturally, anything that wasn't happy became anger. And here's the thing. Anger isn't an emotion. It's a secondary reaction to a feeling. I wasn't given the tools, and society taught me that feelings for men are weakness. So instead of sitting with them, they get masked, usually with rage. A major turning point for me happened a few weeks after my wife's original disclosure. The truth had been trickling out over time, and one night everything came out. All of the details, all at once. I felt my stomach drop and my whole body tense. And before I even understood what was happening, I turned and punched a wall. I've never thrown anything. I've never punched anything. That wasn't who I am. That isn't who I am. But I didn't know what fear or hurt felt like. I just knew it wasn't happy. So my body defaulted to the only reaction I've ever learned, anger. And because I've never experienced fear or hurt at that level, it was like a pressure cooker, and it exploded. And that's the dangerous part, especially for betrayed men. Anger and rage becomes the default response to every emotion we don't know how to name. It doesn't have to be physical. It can be yelling, it could be name-calling, shutting down, degrading. All of these are secondary reactions, not feelings. They are reactions to feelings we were never taught to understand. When you're the betrayed partner, defensiveness feels like abandonment all over again. And it's one of the biggest things that blocks healing after betrayal. When trying to rebuild after betrayal, defensiveness becomes the silent killer of repair. Here's something that I only just started to understand. Defensiveness isn't about the conversation. It's about the emotion underneath it. Sometimes, like in my experience, the pattern is actually self-protection. When I say I'm hurt and the response is, I'm sorry, but you hurt me too, which is then followed by a bullet list of everything I have ever done focused on the negative, that defense is how she protects herself from her shame. It's partial accountability paired with counter-accusation, paired with narrative reframing, paired with mutuality, paired with emotional symmetry. Defensiveness is what happens when her shame gets louder than my pain. It's not conscious malice. It's not intentional cruelty. It's not even about the moment we're in. It's self-protection. The pain carried before the betrayal. The pain that led to the choices that broke the relationship in the first place. But the truth is, when we're betrayed, that defensiveness feels like abandonment. It tells our nervous system that I'm still alone in this. My pain doesn't matter. I still have to carry this by myself. Defensiveness shuts down repair because it shifts focus from the wound to the person who caused it. Healing can't happen when the person who hurt you is still trying to protect themselves from the impact of what they did. Repair requires presence, accountability, attunement, the ability to hear my pain without collapsing into their own. Defensiveness is reactive. Repair is responsiveness. Until someone can regulate their own shame, fear, and guilt, they can't meet you in your pain. That's why defensiveness destroys repair. Even when the person loves you, even when they want to fix things, even when they don't mean to shut you out, it's not about blame. It's about emotional capacity. And without that capacity, healing stays stuck. Grief after betrayal doesn't move in a straight line. It changes how we show up in a relationship, and how we handle grief shapes how we recover from betrayal. Most people know the Kubler-Ross model, or the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And we know grief isn't linear. We don't move through it in any particular order. We jump, we loop, we revisit. For the most part, I don't go back to anger anymore. This was a recent shift for me. My anger has shifted into sadness, which I guess falls into the depression category. Part of that sadness has turned into a bit of an emotional disconnection, which ironically creates more sadness. It was the realization that I didn't feel emotionally safe. I feel insecure. I'm tired of fighting to be heard or seen, so I've pulled back a little. When I was angry or in denial or bargaining, I would share everything. My hurt, my fears, my pain, hoping for empathy, understanding, maybe attunement. Because of things like defensiveness, deflection, and emotional mutualizing, I had to start questioning what being seen even means for me. I was living in this belief that if she sees me, I'll finally feel safe. But for me to feel seen right now, she would have to abandon her patterns of self-protection. And those patterns aren't about me. They're a defense system built in to protect her from shame. We all have them. People rarely change the defenses that protect them from shame. Not because they don't want to, but because they can't even see them. I've been trying to get her to see something she's psychologically structured not to see. Seeing things in the way that I need might be an impossibility right now, so I have to change how I engage with the pattern, and I haven't really figured that out yet. In the meantime, I have to protect my emotional safety. I have to give myself the stability I'm hoping to receive. The hard part is that this creates a bit of a distance, a kind of numbness that I don't really want, but one that helps me stay grounded. So for now, I've paused. I've stopped explaining my pain over and over. I've stopped trying to be understood. I've stopped waiting to be validated. I've stopped hoping she finally gets it. I don't correct reframes. I let her narratives be her narratives, and I protect my inner world by not exposing it to misinterpretation. It creates distance, but it also creates stability, and right now stability is what I need to keep healing. But I do have to figure it out. I have to figure out how to get to a place where the gap doesn't widen further, where emotional safety doesn't equal emotional distance. I want to do a sort of follow-up post to the one I made about defensiveness and how it can feel like abandonment. I'm not saying that my partner doesn't have feelings. I'm not saying their feelings don't matter. The unfaithful made a choice driven by their pain, and that choice created a rupture in the relationship. It didn't just break trust, it broke us. And yes, there are things in the relationship that need to be addressed. Things that need to change. But not yet. I feel selfish sometimes saying that my needs have to come first, but the truth is they do. They will get their turn. And I promise that once I feel seen, once I feel safe, once trust starts to rebuild, I will be in a much better place to support their pain. But for right now, it's my time. I need to stabilize. I need room for my hurt to exist without being overshadowed. I need emotional safety before I can offer anything back. As hard as it might be for them, I'm not in a place where I can carry their feelings or the relationship. Not yet. Their time will come. It's just not right now. So there's this thing I do, and I'm not saying it's the healthiest approach, but it's something that helps me get through the hard moments in my life. I didn't even realize how much I relied on it until I was forced to do the work on myself while trying to heal from betrayal trauma. It's cognitive bypass. My therapist pointed it out in the very early days of recovery, and once I saw it, I realized how much I've been doing this my whole life. Cognitive bypass is when you jump over the uncomfortable emotional work and go straight into thinking, analyzing, planning, or rationalizing, instead of actually feeling what's happening. It's basically using our mind to avoid our emotions. So as an example, after my wife's most recent affair, I decided that because she unilaterally removed monogamy from our relationship, I would create a set of rules for what happens if and when it ever happens again. A one-night stand, work, hookup, emotional connections with someone else, travel, all of it. I basically built a mental framework for an open relationship. Not because that's what I want, but because it felt like a way to protect myself from being blindsided again. If she chooses to do something that used to be off limits, I told myself I wouldn't be hurt because now we have these rules. That's cognitive bypass. It's how I managed or used to manage my feelings that were too overwhelming to sit with. I'm not sure it's the healthiest approach, but it's a coping tool that I've used when my emotions just felt too big to hold. I find that more often than not, when I try to talk to my wife about the affair and focus on affair work, it always turns into relationship work. Now, I will not discount the need for the relationship work. I truly want to do it. I want to have the best relationship anyone could ask for. When the focus shifts from the affair to the relationship, and I hear things like the relationship work and the affair work are connected, it lands for me as if the relationship caused the affair, or at least played a major role in the decision-making process. When the two types of work aren't separated, it creates a sense of accountability that's shared. It starts to sound like if I hadn't, then you wouldn't have. And that's not accurate. It's not a dynamic I can participate in. The importance of separating the two types of work is this. Affair work is about the choices that were made, the breach of trust, the secrecy, the impact those actions had on me. Relationship work is about the patterns, habits, communications, and the connections between us as partners. These are not the same thing. They cannot be treated as the same thing, and they cannot be worked on at the same time. Affair work must come first because it addresses the rupture. Relationship work can only begin once the foundation is repaired. If we blend them together, I end up feeling like I'm being asked to share the responsibility for something I didn't choose, I didn't cause, I didn't participate in. It makes me feel like my pain is being folded into this mutual problem instead of being acknowledged as the result of a unilateral choice. Separating the two isn't about blame, it's about clarity. It's about making sure the accountability for the affair stays where it belongs, so then the accountability for the relationship can eventually be shared in a healthy way. Until the affair work is addressed on its own with transparency, accountability, and repair, I can't fully engage in the relationship work. Not because I don't want to, but because my nervous system is still responding to the rupture, not the relationship. It's hard to not take it personally. All the experts say that when someone chooses to have an affair, it has nothing to do with their partner, nothing to do with the relationship, nothing to do with who you are. But it's hard for me to not take it personally when I realize that when my partner was in pain, she didn't come to me. She chose not to come to me. And it's impossible not to wonder why I wasn't the one she turned to when she needed to talk, when she needed to be comforted, when she needed to feel safe. Why wasn't I enough to be chosen? And in the aftermath, the recovery, I'm the one who ends up broken. My confidence is gone. My self-worth is shattered. My pain is misunderstood or minimized. I'm living with a trauma I never asked for. The consequences of someone else's choice. The consequences of a decision I had no part in making. I've been fundamentally changed on every level. And now I have to say goodbye to the old version of myself and the relationship I never wanted to say goodbye to. And the kicker, something I find very difficult, is that I have to turn to the person who caused all of this to help me heal. That's the part that feels impossible some days, trying to rebuild with the same hands that broke me. Trying to find safety with the person who made me feel most unsafe. Trying to trust the same person who taught me not to trust. So yeah, they say it's not personal, but living through it feels pretty personal. Seeking answers feels like pulling teeth sometimes. People say stop asking why. There's no good answer. Nothing will ever satisfy the question. And maybe that's true. But most of us still believe that if we could just understand the why, then everything would finally make sense. I had to stop asking why, and I shifted to how. See, seeking answers seems pointless if there are no solutions. So I decided that my goal was to find solutions. It's said that in order to prevent repeating the pattern that causes someone to choose to have an affair, the wayward partner must find the root cause behind their choices. I think this is extremely difficult. Not because there are no answers, but because it seems like the focus is often misplaced. See, it's easy to find and maybe even blame the external explanations. Childhood trauma, absent parents, unstable home, generational trauma, addiction, all of that, and more. While these may be contributing factors, they're not what allows someone to choose betrayal. I think in seeking the root, the unfaithful needs to look at their internal accountability, the part of themselves that allows them to make the choice to have an affair, the part where they gave themselves permission to betray. It's easy to say I had an affair because I had a broken childhood, but broken childhood or not, it's about the choice. The issue isn't with their childhood, it's with the internal justification that's used to make that choice feel acceptable. I ask my wife the same question every few days. I reword it or rework it, but it's fundamentally the same question. It's basically, when you look back, what did you see in your thinking? What justifications or blind spot made the affair possible? And what are you doing to change those patterns so they can't lead you there again? Until she can answer this without pointing to an external explanation, I don't think the deepest part of the work, or finding the real root, has even begun. I will say that she's working on herself, and I don't want to discount her dedication and efforts. But until I know that there is internal accountability, or at least working toward that, I fear that her next affair is just around the corner. Do I feel weak for staying after betrayal? I feel a lot of things. things about myself, things about my wife, things about our relationship. But I don't think it's about being weak. It's not easy, that's for sure. Honestly, leaving would be the easy way out. Something people don't like to talk about is that when there's a rupture this big, both people end up with a lot of work to do on themselves. And yeah, it feels unfair. I thought my life was pretty good. I thought I was pretty good. Suddenly, I'm forced to look inward and make changes I never asked for. And we all know, none of us like change. I think staying is the harder path. It means not running from the hard conversations, not avoiding pain, not pretending I don't care. Staying means confronting the truth and examining my own patterns and learning to communicate honestly and trying to rebuild something with intention. I think that takes courage. It's not weakness. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I never woke up thinking, am I being stupid? Or am I being taken advantage of? Am I not valuing myself enough? Am I weak for staying? I think these questions come from fear. There's a difference between staying because you're afraid to leave and staying because you're trying to rebuild something real. So I ask myself, am I abandoning myself by staying? When I sit with that, I'm not afraid to leave because the old relationship, it's already gone. I'm here because I want to rebuild, and I can do that by naming my needs, expressing my pain, creating new structure and boundaries, asking for clarity, and exploring my own patterns, understanding my trauma, and being honest about my fears and my desires. As long as my partner is receptive and doing the same work for herself, I do believe we have a fighting chance. So today I'm feeling out of sorts, and it's because I didn't express my needs. Last night during our check-in, we tried this safety exercise from the book Rebuilding Trust by Morgan Johnson. It's a pretty simple exercise. One person starts with a positive I need to talk about, and then they share a need or a feeling, not an opinion or thought. And the other person practices active listening, reflecting back what they've heard, validating it, and asking curious questions. Then after both people have a turn, we talk about how it went. Usually the person having the harder time goes first, and I was definitely having a hard time. But my mind went completely blank. Like, I had nothing. I felt like a little bit of a failure, and I had to remind myself that the emotional overload is real and it's not a character flaw. My wife shared and I listened. I stayed present. I didn't jump in with opinions, but even after she finished, I still couldn't share anything. I was just like frozen. A little while after we finished the exercise, we were just chatting, and she mentioned that she had to email her affair partner today about an old work project. And she said that she was going to add a third person to the email to keep it professional. I appreciate that she told me that, but my immediate thought was, why can't someone else send that email? There were other people on the team. Why does it have to be her? I didn't say any of this. I just kind of stayed quiet. So today I'm feeling out of sorts, and it's because I didn't express my needs. My uneasiness is at the cost of holding everything in. I had an opportunity to extend the safety exercise into real life, I guess, and I didn't. I let fear and self-disconnection choose for me. So today I have to repair myself. I have to acknowledge that I was triggered, and not just because she'll be in contact with her affair partner, but because I didn't feel safe enough to speak up. So I have to validate myself. I have to remind myself that self-protection is not failure. And I kind of have to spend the day reconnecting with what I need. So feels like a journaling day. Why are apologies so hard? Because an apology isn't just saying I'm sorry, especially after infidelity or betrayal. I'm sorry is just a string of words, and for me those words mean nothing if they're not backed by behavior. Now, I've been waiting almost 2 years for an actual apology. Not just an I'm sorry, or even worse, an I'm sorry but. I think that most of us hear the same kind of apology. It's, I'm sorry I hurt you. I didn't know how I could have ever done this, and it'll never happen again. That's not an apology. At best, it's a non-apology apology. It shifts the focus to their feelings instead of staying with mine. It tries to create reassurance without taking accountability. It's not completely awful, it's just incomplete. And unfocused. It's missing the parts that help me feel safe and inch toward forgiveness and focus on the parts that actually help me heal. For me, I think the hardest part is knowing exactly what I need from an apology, but feeling like I can't tell my wife what that is, because if I tell her, it'll then feel scripted, like she's just repeating what I want her to say instead of arriving there on her own. I think a real apology comes from doing the internal work and not being coached into saying the right words. Honestly, I think this is something we should have all been taught as children, that an apology has three major components. First, there's clearly acknowledging the behavior, naming what has happened, not minimizing it, not defending, not explaining it away. Then from there, moving to validating the impact, recognizing how the behavior or choice is affecting another person emotionally. I think this is where empathy lives. And then after that, you move to the repair. How are things going to be done a little bit differently? What steps are going to be taken to make sure that this doesn't happen again? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be accountable, empathetic, and honest about the path forward. I will be overjoyed the day I receive an apology like this, because it will mean that the work is finally being done. The blame, the deflection, the defensiveness will be replaced with accountability, responsibility, empathy, and a genuine understanding of the impact choices and decisions have on not only me, but our relationship, and a recognition of my pain. And once that happens, I feel like safety and trust, it's not that far behind. Today I want to talk about something that a lot of us, men, do without even realizing it. Hiding. Not hiding from people, but hiding from our own emotions. Most of us were never taught how to identify, yet alone name, what we're feeling. So everything gets filtered through irritability, anger, and for some, dangerously, straight up rage. And it's not because we're bad. It's because anger is the only acceptable emotion many of us are ever allowed to show. The expectation of what it is to be a man. What I've learned is that anger is usually just a surface layer, a secondary response to a feeling we can't identify. Underneath it might be fear, shame, sadness, disappointment, or just feeling overwhelmed, but we don't have the language for it. One of the things that actually helped me was using an emotion wheel. It seems simple, but seeing the words laid out, the real words, helps me slow down and ask, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? And nearly 100% of the time, it wasn't anger. It's something quieter, something I never learned to name. Think about hunger. As kids, we're taught what an empty stomach feels like, and then we're given a word, hungry, so that we can express it to get what we need. Simple, right? I think emotions work the same way. Once I started taking the time to identify and actually name what I was feeling, I got one step closer to being able to sit with it. It's not easy. It forced me to look at myself and accept the parts of me that are uncomfortable. I didn't realize how hard it is to be vulnerable with myself, yet alone extend that vulnerability to other people. But once I started recognizing and naming my emotions, I can work with them instead of letting myself be controlled by them. Naming the feeling doesn't magically fix everything, but it gives me a place to start. I can't heal what I can't name, and learning the words has changed the way I understand myself. Once I know what I'm actually feeling, I don't have to run from it or let it control me. It's not about being emotional, it's about being honest. And this is how I stop hiding, one named feeling at a time.